Rochelle shook her head. Not always. Good to know. Because if you did, then you wouldn't be the woman I thought you were when I saw you present that short segment from Central Park last week. You saw that? Yes. Your questions were excellent, and you refused to let that weasel of a man wriggle out of answering. That interview was the reason you asked for me today? I've been wondering. You struck me as a young woman with untapped potential. I'm grateful for the opportunity. Rochelle sat straighter and smoothed her skirt. I can't believe I'm here. Howard usually does all the high-profile interviews. Why were people so accepting of adverse circumstances? So slow to realize their own power? But power came with risk, of course, and most people were averse to risk. Things are always the way they are until we change them, Gail said. Be bold. Decide what you want and go after it. And if that means upsetting a few people along the way, then do it. She closed her eyes as someone stroked a strand of her hair into place and sprayed it. This is your chance to ask me the questions Howard Banks wouldn't think to ask. Which shouldn't be too hard, she thought, because the man had the imagination and appeal of stale bread. Howard had interviewed her a decade earlier, and he had been patronizing and paternalistic. It gave Gail pleasure to know that by insisting on being interviewed by this junior reporter, she had annoyed him. With any luck, he had burst a blood vessel in the most valuable part of his anatomy, which, for him, was probably his ego. If I don't give them what they're expecting, I could lose my job. Gail opened one eye. Not if you give them something better than what they're expecting. They're not going to fire you if the ratings go up. What's on their list, let me guess? My work-life balance, how I handle being a woman in a man's world? Boring, boring. The woman laughed. You're obviously a pro at this. Think of the people watching. Ask the questions they'd ask if they were in the room with me. If you were a woman eager to make a change in your life, what would you want to hear? If you were struggling to get ahead in the workplace, which you are, constantly blocked by those around you, what would you want to know? Rochelle picked up the papers from her lap and folded them in a deliberate gesture. I'd want to know your secrets, how you handle it all, how you handled it at the beginning, before you had everything you have now. You started with nothing, put yourself through college while working 3 jobs, and you've become one of the most successful women in business. You've transformed companies and individuals. I want to know whether any of your experiences might be of use to me, whether you could transform me. I want to come away feeling so inspired, I'd call the show and thank them. And you think they'd fire you for that? The woman stared at her. No, I don't. She slapped the papers down on the desk. What is wrong with me? I've read all your books several times, and yet I was about to ask the questions I've been handed. One of my favorite sections in your last book was that bit about other people's expectations being like reins holding you back. You were our role model in college. She pressed her palm to her chest. Meeting you is the best Christmas gift. Christmas? It's only a few weeks away. I love the holidays, don't you? Gail did not love the holidays. She didn't like the way everything closed down. She didn't like the crowds on the streets or the tacky decorations. She didn't like the uncomfortable memories that stuck to her like bits of parcel tape. Aren't you a little old to be excited about Christmas? She asked. Never, Rochelle laughed. I love a big family gathering, massive tree, gifts in front of the fire, you know the type of thing. Gail turned her attention to the makeup artist, who was brandishing lipstick. Not that horrible brown, red. But red, and not an insipid, washed-out red. I want to look at me red. I have the perfect one in my purse. There was much scrabbling, and an appropriate lipstick was produced. Gail sat still while the makeup artist finished her work. This is your opportunity, Rochelle. Take it and ride it all the way home. If you make an impression on the public, your bosses won't be able to hold you back. There. Done. Gail had the power to give her a boost, and she'd used it.